What's going on, young people? Thanks for joining me for our second to last video lecture from this unit. We are still talking about personality. In our last video, I just kind of did an introduction to personality. And this one, I'm going to be talking about the different tests that tell us something about people's personality. We call these tests inventory. It's a type of psychological test that measures something about somebody. All right, so we're going to do an introduction to those, talk about these other kinds of personality tests, and then talk about one very specific and very interesting one, okay? So what we're gonna do here with Roman numeral number 1, I'm gonna walk through a handful of different types of inventories, okay? So for example, the first one, a guy named Raymond Cattell came up with what's called the 16PF, okay? The 16PF, which stands for the 16 personality factors, okay? The nice thing about this one is that you don't need to know the 16 personality factors, okay? Just know that this guy, Raymond Cattell, like Allport found 18,000 words about personality and kind of tried to lump them down through factor analysis. Raymond Cattell said that there were 16 different traits, all right? Again, don't write any of these down. You will not be quizzed on them. It should not be on the AP exam. But what he said was that these are different categories. So like, we can rate you in each trait. So perfectionism, are you more controlled? You are perfectionist, or are you undisciplined? Sensitivity, are you tender or tough, right? How do you feel about rules? Do you like to follow them, or you prefer non-conformity? Warmth, are you outgoing, or are you more reserved? Cattell said these are the 16 categories, and that we can measure how people do in these 16, all right? Now, two folks named Costa and McCrae, 5 syllables, they developed a test called the Big Five. Sometimes it's called the Neo Big Five. And what they said was that we didn't need to have 16 categories, we could have 5 main categories. They did even more factor analysis to narrow down the categories. We talked about these way back. First day of school, I'm pretty sure. I had y'all take the Big Five so I could learn a little about you. Those Big Five traits were how open you are to new things, conscientiousness, how detailed you are, how organized you are. You have to be conscientious to correctly spell conscientiousness, right? How close do you pay attention to things? Extroversion, how extroverted, outgoing, social you are. How agreeable are you, trusting and kind? And how neurotic are you? How anxious and particular and dramatic are you? Okay. They said that for 1, 2, 3, and 4, being really open or not very open, being really extroverted or really introverted, being really conscientious or not very conscientious, those aren't necessarily positive or negative. They're just traits about yourself. This is the one that they did say healthy people want to be lower in this, okay? So what I'm going to ask y'all to do here in a little bit is to try and find either your Big Five reflection and test from the very beginning of the school year, which is on the semester 1 e-class page, or if you just want to retake it now that you're a little bit older, you've gone through this tough school year, maybe you want to see how have your Big Five traits changed, okay? The link is tinyurl.com/Big Five Jones. I'll put up again on the last screen because I'm going to ask you to actually do a couple of these as part of your homework. So our video shouldn't be too long because part of your homework is going to be taking 2 or 3 of these different tests. All right. So far 2, Raymond Cattell's 16PF, and then Costa and McCrae, who narrowed it down to just the Big Five. All right. A guy named Hans Eysenck, he said, well, personality, we can actually just narrow down to 2 traits. That's it, 2 traits. That's supposed to be a 2. He said that if we just know how consistent somebody is, they're stable, they're unstable. And if we know how extroverted they are, how outgoing versus inward they are, a guy named Eysenck said that we can describe people with 1 word based on where they fall on this range. So take a look at it. Where would you place yourself? Are you more on the extroverted side? And if so, are you more consistent and stable? So like maybe you're easygoing or talkative or lively? Or are you more on the unstable side, right? Are you more excitable and restless, right? Find a word that describes you. More introverted people, maybe you're over here. So like, you might find that maybe at school you're one thing, right? Like maybe at school, Mr. Jones is, I don't know, even-tempered, kind of introverted, very stable. But maybe when I'm with my friends, I'm more impulsive, right? You might have different parts of your life where you have different personalities, okay? The next one I want you to write down is the Myers-Briggs. I mentioned previously that Carl Jung, right, the guy who came up with archetypes and the collective unconscious, he said that there are archetypes that we fit into, and the Myers-Briggs test is kind of based on those, okay? I need you all to take the Myers-Briggs. That one's important for us to have some good conversations when we come back from the long weekend. tinyurl.com/Jones MBTI, the Jones Myers-Briggs Type Inventory, I believe is what that stands for. I'll also put in the last slide. I don't think we did that at the beginning of the year, but I really want y'all to know your Myers-Briggs type. Okay, it's a really good test, the one that people often like the most. Cool. With the Myers-Briggs types, you can actually see what's most common. So 12% of folks are either an ISTJ or an ESTJ. So being an STJ is the most common outcome. And you're like, Mr. Jones, I don't know what that means. Well, you'll find out when you take the Myers-Briggs, okay? I personally am this 6% category. So kind of one of the middle categories. I'm an INTJ. So the first letter is either I or E. The second letter is either N or S. The third letter is either T or F. And the last letter is either P or J. And I'll talk more about those in class, what all the different letters stand for, and give you some examples. Okay? Quick check for understanding. See if you can answer these questions without looking at your notes. What are the big five? What is factor analysis? What is this term, your tendency to be a certain level of emotionality? That was from our last class. And then number 4 is your opinion of these tests. Which one do you like the most so far? Which one do you think best describes and sums up somebody's personality? Okay, I want to hear that from you in class. Roman numeral 2. The tests I just gave you were more objective, right? They can be scored easily. There's a different type of test called a projective test, where you project your feelings onto something else. We've talked about one previously. We talked about the TAT, the thematic apperception test, where you tell a tale, right? You see a picture of somebody and you tell a story about them. So at the very beginning of this unit, when we talked about motivation, we said that the TAT can reveal, supposedly, whether or not you're achievement oriented. I said, it's not very valid, it's not very reliable, it's not a great test, but some folks use it, some Freudians in particular, okay? So here's another example, because this test is not just about your achievement. What Freud would say is that when you try and explain what's happening in this picture, you are revealing something about yourself. So who do you focus on? Do you focus on the guy in the bed? Do you focus on the woman by the door? Why are the characters doing what they're doing? What has happened to them? Freud would say that whatever you say about this picture reveals your deepest fears, right? So some people are going to see this person as alive, and some people are going to see him as dead, sick or drunk, cheating, or in a beautiful relationship. Shame, guilt, sadness, frustration, embarrassment. What emotion and why? Freud would say that the story you tell a tale, T-A-T, that reveals something about yourself. I like using that abbreviation T-A-T. You know, we have here, these are tats. You get it? They're thematic apperception test, tattoos. Tell a tale. What's going on here? In the left, you see the people. You see the woman, right? Over here on the right, you might not be able to see it very well, but there's 2 people in that picture. What's going on? What's happening here? And then you have the skull in the background. These are super cool tattoos. If I was going to get a tattoo, maybe I would, get this on my forehead. TAT, the thematic apperception test, is you telling a tale, right? You may have heard of the Rorschach test, where you look at a blob, an ink blot, and you have to kind of say, what do you see in this picture? All right. Rorschach ink blot test, if you want to write that down. Rorschach. Here's a few examples of some of the most famous ink blots. All right, you got this one. What do you see? What does it look like to you? Freud would say that whatever you see in this picture, it tells us something about you. What do you see in this ink blot, this random blob? What do you see? Freud would say that whatever you see, it tells us something about yourself. And we'll have people share in class, and I'll share some of the common answers that people give to these. Okay, so make sure you can answer these questions. Number 4 is probably the most important. We might watch a little Big Bang Theory in class that talks about some of this stuff, the projective tests, some forms of therapy. Our third Roman numeral is about a very unique kind of test, maybe the most famous test, the MMPI. Go ahead and write what that stands for. The Minnesota Multiphasic, meaning it has several parts to it. And it says it's a personality inventory test, but what it is actually doing, the MMPI, MP, it is measuring your psychopathology, okay? So pathology, this root, pathology, is when something is wrong, weird, off, unusual. Psychopath, so psycho has to do with your mind. So psychopathology is the study of, is there something different about your mind? That's what this test is. Now, in the past, people have referred to people who have something different about their mind as being psychopaths or psychopathic. We don't use that term in psychology. We'll talk more about that in our next unit on abnormal psychology. But someone who has a personality disorder, how do we know? Well, we can give them a test that lets us know that something might be unusual about the way that they see the world, the way they think about things. So the full MMPI is very long, dozens and dozens of questions, hundreds of questions, and they don't give it very often. They don't want this test floating around out there. They don't want people to be able to practice the MMPI and rehearse their answers and come prepared with that, right? So there's not a lot of public information about the MMPI, but I got a little snippet here. So interesting questions, true, false. I like to read about crime. My hands and feet are usually warm. My life is full of things that keep me interested. I'm an important person. At times, I feel like smashing things. People should try to understand their dreams. I work under a lot of tension. Once in a while, I think of things too bad to talk about. These are really interesting questions. This is a weird kind of test. Again, hundreds of questions long. And what they do afterwards is they let you know how might your thinking be a little bit unusual, right? Do you internalize, do you externalize, do you relate to others in a unique way? Do you have unique interests in terms of what you like to read and what you like to do? Do you show signs of aggression, psychoticism, lack of control, neuroticism? There's that word again from the Big Five. Introversion. They just kind of want to see, based on your true false questions, do you fit into these categories? And that might let them know whether or not you appear to have what we call a personality disorder. And we'll talk more about those in our next unit. Okay, so pretty interesting about the MMPI. See if you can answer these 5 questions. And again, what do you find most interesting so far? Some of these are a repeat, I guess. In class, we might do a little, we might watch a little TED Talk about a really interesting story about someone who purposefully manipulated that MMPI, what they shouldn't call it the psychopath test, but they do. So that's all the notes, but here I need you to do, don't go anywhere yet, okay? Required, mandatory. I need you, preferably right now, to go take the Myers-Briggs. tinyurl.com/Jones MBTI will take you right to that website, okay? I'll try and post this or send it out, but make sure you take the Myers-Briggs before our next class. Also, you either need to retake the Big Five or find your reflection from the first day of school and take a picture of it, take a screenshot of it so that you can reference it so that we can talk about it in class together. If you want to look at an actual Rorschach test, there's another link here. So this is tinyurl.com/Big5Jones, and this is tinyurl.com/21119 test, because I taught about it on February 11th, 2019. So that's why it has that in TinyURL. If you need anything, send me a message, let me know. Otherwise, take these inventories. Hope y'all are going to have a great long weekend. We'll Talk to you later. Peace out.